interested to have a show of hands who was here for the previous performance. Okay, so most of you. Who hasn't heard Eve's piece yet? Okay, a handful? Okay, maybe. Okay, great. So welcome, and of course we have the wonderful Eve Castro-Robinson with us, our composer in residence this year, and we've been performing music of hers in every concert that we've programmed and performed, and from, what was the earliest? What year? 1989 or something?
1987.
Which one was that one?
Undercurrent, the solo clarinet.
Solo clarinet on Friday night, right through to this work, which is the most recent, right?
Yes, absolutely. Written a few months ago and sent off to you.
Yeah, so we received we received the work about 2 months ago.
You can't be too careful with deadlines. You get a deadline, months before, and you think, great. And if you were sensible as a composer, you would write it and send it off, thereby, getting the rest of the money. But most of us don't. You spend, it's a classic composerly thing. Any creative gets this big idea, yay, this will be exciting, then goes into a sort of slough, whatever it is, slough to respond. And then you come out the other end and start thinking, oh, deadline's coming, and start writing furiously, and if you're not careful, most of it gets written the week before, actually.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that process. So usually, you discuss with the composer what sort of work, in terms of the instrumentation and the length. And sometimes you can give a brief, but we didn't give you a brief. It was really just for us to see what Eve would write for this combination of instruments, which is clarinet, violin, viola and cello, and for 12 or 13 minutes, and I believe it was 12 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yes, something like that, 13 minutes, as long as it's not... Well, I never go too long. My music seems to be on the more economical side, so it's very rare that my piece would be too long, like other nameless composers.
So, how did you decide what to write?
Well, I knew where it was. Somebody asked me before, do composers, or do I think about the physical situation of the performance? And I said, well, a little bit, but you hope that the piece will have a future life. So you can't think too much about the view of the lake down here, indubitably amazing as it is. But I thought of that, and I called it the Earth's Eye, and for those of you who were here, I quoted the Henry Thoreau quote from Walden, which said, a lake is the landscape's most beautiful and expressive feature. It is Earth's eye, and by looking into it you expose the depths of your own nature, which is quite an ask in the scheme of things, but that's what I thought about. And then I think Justine was surprised when I admitted to her that it was a difficult ensemble, because a clarinet with 3 string instruments, to me, is difficult. One is of a certain type, and the other 3 are of a certain type. So what do you do? So I decided to favour the clarinet. And you don't turn it into a tiny concerto, but it was a bit that feeling.
Right. And the work has 6 movements, or do you think of them as movements?
Yes.
Yeah. At what point did it become clear that that would be the structure?
Look, I can't remember such things, annoyingly, to everyone. I think I started it, and then you're writing away and you think, 13 minutes. Am I going to be able to fill that duration with what I'm currently doing? Now, you see, this is where we composers have such difficulty. We have in the repertoire, the Schubert string quintet. Not to live up to, but to have your own piece followed by that just puts life into perspective. and I did sit there thinking, not have I gone wrong choosing the wrong profession, more how to behave musically. I did think to myself about tonality and the pull of it, that tonality in writing music that is, let's say, agreeable harmonically and speaks in a certain language. It has lasted for hundreds of years, and I got to thinking, could I move more in that direction instead of offering up a different kind of oral experience? It's a very strange position. It must be the same for artists. John Reynolds, whose mural is inside Tate Atamira, looking at, I don't know, Leonardo. Well, I'm sure he doesn't think I wish I could draw like that, although he might.
But do you wish that you could write like Schubert? I imagine not.
No, I think composers don't go around thinking that. They're sort of these gods of the past, almost. A piece like that, which is beyond music. It's a human experience of the most profound time.
So it sounds like you were aware that that piece would be in the program, and it inspired you in a certain direction with your piece.
No.
Oh, it didn't.
No, I didn't think that. Although, of course, one is often, as a composer, and the composers I can see are still, Chris Watson, our wonderful cameraman, is also a fine composer. You're often, usually, upstaged by what comes next in the program. I've had Stravinsky's, Rite of Spring and that sort of thing. You can't do much about that. Your very husband, Mark Today, has got me being the current composer in residence also with Orchestra Wellington, and I am to write, I have written, a short piece to precede Benjamin Britten's War Requiem. Oh. Bad luck. You see, you get it. So this is what happens. You don't think, oh, okay, I'm going to outdo him. You think, okay, what can I do that will lead into that? Or what can I do as a humble little offering? So that's what I've done there. It's really interesting, the context of the contemporary work in programming.
Sure. And I personally think it's incredibly valuable to have contemporary music side by side, those masterpieces, and they reflect on each other very powerfully. So,
yes.
I think there's huge value in that.
Yes, absolutely. Because you can't help but write in the zeitgeist in which you find yourself. And you're not very aware of that at the time necessarily. You don't think, oh, well, I'd better reflect the hideousness of the Palestinian situation, say, or any other foment. You set about writing, and that's what happens. Your music must reflect what is happening, I think, unless you are being very abstract about things, which I'm certainly not.
So what does this piece reflect of you?
I don't know, actually. The Earth's Eye. I think, I had to ask a few people, because what's happened in this wonderful festival is that a lot of the pieces that are being played I know really well. And you must think, as the listeners, well, if you've written it, you must know it really well. No, it doesn't work like that. It mostly, you've brought it into being. It's kind of notes on the computer or notes on paper, and you've heard it in your inner self, and then you hear it brought to life. And this one for me has been rather difficult to get to know, probably because it's in these discrete movements. So it doesn't speak as one, like tumbling strains, or like undercurrents, or commemoration, or most of the pieces that have been played. It doesn't speak to me as one.
So going back to one of the questions about what's the reason that you ended up with 6 different movements? Do you know?
Well, hang on. I think I thought you're thinking about duration. You know what most composers want is instrumentation and duration. Okay. Now we know what we're doing. We've got that group of players, and that's the length. So you don't want to write a thing that's an even number of movements, usually. It's like arranging flowers. You don't put 4 tulips in the vase, because it would look a bit silly, feng shui-wise, wouldn't it? I'm mixing my metaphors. But so there's something 6. It just worked out like that, because you want something, and if I'm going to have that floating one, have a vigorous one. It's a bit like the Schubert we've just had, although he plays tricks, of course, doesn't he? Just as you think there's something coming, it doesn't happen, and he veers back. Oh, boy, what a work of utter genius. So nimble, and then you have to counteract that with a mysterious one, and then finish with a furious one. Yeah, that's how I did it. It's kind of flower arranging for sound.
I keep on thinking of questions and then promptly forget them. Do you respond, the musicians that are going to be playing your piece, does that have an influence on you at all?
I think I didn't know Julian Bliss, but I heard about him, and I thought, well, he's going to be able to play anything, and so I would have known that I can give him all that difficult runs and difficult high spiky stuff, and the rest of you I knew were terrific and could do anything too. So you don't.
So you weren't limited by it.
No, and I've been lucky never to be limited. Although I did have one work I had to do for a school's project or something, and that's quite difficult because right from the off, writing as a student composer, I had really terrific performers as friends. So I've always had virtuosic performers to write for, and I think it's probably coloured my writing, because I think my writing suits people who can respond to the extremes, and so a couple of people have said to me about extreme utterances, that the high and the low, the fast and the slow, that the extreme technical demands I place on musicians. But this lot can do anything. I mean, you lot can do anything.
So what I'm really interested to know is where you have gone through your career and your compositions. So for those of you that have heard a number of them, you know, there are some different styles evolving. And when we first played this for Eve just last week, Eve asked me, what do you think, is this different than previous works? And I absolutely thought so. It has quite a different feel to other works I've played of yours. So I'm curious to know why you think that is. Do you know? Is it in response to a change in your lifestyle, having left the university where you were teaching, doing different things?
I hadn't thought about that one, but you never know. You see, you never know what your creative mind's doing. That's one thing. I certainly know that composing has got harder over the decades, because when I listen back to those earlier works, I remember writing them, and I remember sitting there and the thing just flowed out. It wasn't easy, but the music flowed, and now it's not like that.
Do you know why?
Well, I think it's a variety of reasons. I think I said to an audience yesterday, which you may may sound a non sequitur, but I'm a bipolar person. So, having been diagnosed bipolar in 1992, and then being put on very successful medication, fantastic. That there's something to do with that medication, you know, mood stabilizers and antidepressants, that kind of thing, that suppresses the creative impulse. And so when I see nodding heads, it's very poignant. And I know that, you know, there's plenty of people around who know that, and plenty of people who want to go off the medication in order to get that feeling of sheer creativity back, which I wouldn't do because I wouldn't wish myself or anyone else to have another depression. So there's that. So, and I think that may be something to do with finding it difficult to be as creative as I used to be. The other thing is that I'm 67, and you know, with those early pieces, I was in my 30s, and how can you possibly tell what you're going to do at a certain age? I did think I gave a talk a while ago, and people were surprised when I said, look, I think I've done my dash as a composer. I've kind of written all the stuff, I've proved myself, and really, why would I want to keep doing it? It's too hard and it's not really enjoyable. So it's a funny kind of business, and I don't want to put you off, Estella, as being a young composer in the prime of your life, because it doesn't happen to everyone, but it does happen to people.
But in the face of that, you do keep composing.
Yes, because it's nice to keep being asked. And I asked my friend, frankly, John Passarthus, a wonderful composer, somebody who gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning, makes his Greek coffee, and then sits about composing for the whole day. And he said, just enjoy it, just enjoy the process, a couple of years ago. And I thought, that's not a bad idea. That is not a bad idea. And even though it sounds absolutely fatuous, I think that there is something in that. Because it's so hard. Yeah, it's so hard. And not in a, oh God, it's so hard, sort of feel sorry for me kind of way. It's like anyone of the creative arts. For some more musical people, I think it flows out of them, but not from me.
Well, I think things change, and
yeah.
Every composer, every musician will have different experiences at different times of their lives.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm interested to hear you say that you feel less confident or something to that.
No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say I was less confident. I'm more confident in life. How else would I get up the other day and do a stand-up gig?
Yeah.
After all. But no, not less confident. The act of composing is a kind of slippery deal.
Right.
It's bringing into life something that isn't there yet. And
was it that you said it was harder process?
Yes, yeah, probably.
That's interesting. I'm curious to unpick that.
Yes.
What the
So am I.
The challenge. Yeah, but if somebody like John Suffers does say, you know, enjoy it, and do you feel that you were able to respond to that?
Yes, I mean I've written this piece and the Little Birdsong piece and the piece for Orchestra Wellington, which is a different kind of deal. It's much more sombre, and I think actually perhaps I'm better at writing music that is sombre. Or you know, sometimes when you listen to your own music, you think, oh boy, that's powerful. That's melancholy. That's sombre. My music isn't really very pretty and frivolous, I don't think. Good. I don't want to be pretty and frivolous.
I'm interested if any of you have any questions that you're burning to ask. Otherwise I'll think of some more.
You talked about how you reflected on the masters paying their pieces being paid after yours. What do you think they would say about what the music?
So the question was, what would the likes of Schubert have to say about Eve's piece? And
yeah, I mean, the piece would feel too foreign and slight, wouldn't it? But I think he would have been feeling the same in his era. He must have been, because apparently he was quite a shy kind of fella. That's where we think of him with his curly hair and chubby cheeks and little spectacles, don't we, Schubert? And of course he was dead by 30. So really we don't have the man, the maturing man. But I think in any era things are pretty much the same after all. You only have to read Nicholas Slominski's lexicon of musical invective to know what composers thought of each other, and you know, people being giftless bastards, and they're talking about crimes and too many notes about Beethoven and his path to heaven with his own radiance strewn was Mallarmé on Wagner, or possibly a few of us think that, but composers really aren't busy thinking of other composers.
no,
Necessarily.
sure. How about what it means to be a New Zealander and whether that has some impact on your work?
Oh yes, it does. Yes, it does. And it's partly why I introduced my little presentations in Māori. It was lovely to have Deborah Waikapo here, and just to hear her speaking te reo is pretty meaningful. And Estella Wallace, the emergency composer, has whakapapa, and I think very important. And you only have to look out the window and go beyond the, oh, isn't it gorgeous, to these are the very rocks and crevasses and lakes that make up Aotearoa, to translate that into what's happening creatively here. Hugely important to me. Born in England to a New Zealand father, so I don't go around talking about the fact that I was born in England particularly, because it's not very useful.
So what might we hear in this piece today, Earth's Eye, that is a reflection of your place in New Zealand, or New Zealand's place within you?
Gosh, I mean, because I wrote it around the feeling of the lakescape, if that's a word, and that Henry Thoreau, who was an American man, very in touch with the natural environment. I think it's the same sort of thing. You don't quite know how you're expressing it. I know with working with Estella Wallace there, on her piece, she was very specific about the remarkables, their extraordinary shape and climbing them and that kind of experience. I don't think I did the same so definitively like that. It's a deeper part of you, I think, that comes out.
Yes, so I can imagine, leaving the landscape aside, that maybe there's a spirit that's connected to being a New Zealander, maybe, that comes out in your music?
That's nearer the word. That's nearer the word spirit, and its extension spiritual, because that's really what it's all about. And one, or I, am searching for that kind of spiritual nature in myself vis-a-vis music, without it being religious, because of course the two aren't exactly the same thing.
Well, having performed this once so far, I think it's a very powerful piece. I really love the changes of character and I think it's got a lot of power and really connects to me, and it's interesting. I've played a lot of contemporary music in my time, and I feel like I never know the piece until I've performed it at least once, and when you perform it multiple times, it starts to make more sense, and so I'm really looking forward to playing it again today.
Thank you, Justine.
It's an interesting process because you were saying the same thing, that it feels like you're still getting to know it. And has that always been the case with your work, that it takes time to sort of digest it or experience it, or what's that?
Yes, I think that does happen. I remember writing Tumbling Strains, which is a very frenetic one for violin and cello. In point of fact, I was going through a ghastly depression at the time, which isn't funny really, it's just the situation. Not that anyone would dare laugh, but I just mean that was in 1992, yes, and perhaps that helped to give it that kind of real edge. But I remember my late dad, came over and we listened to a recording of it. And when you listen through somebody else's ears, or attempt to, you kind of hear the piece have a new life. And as I listened to him listen, I thought, how on earth will he make sense of that? Because it sounded just like a big jumble of frenzied notes. And yet now I know it so well that I could sing it if it were possible to sing tremoloing strings.
Yeah, and it is that act of people listening to the piece that really brings it to life.
Yes, that's absolutely
as a performer, we can't create that until we have sort of this forum. So
yes, that's right.
It's interesting.
Yes, and it's no good for, I don't think there are many composers anymore who, it used to be said, have music in their bottom drawers. In other words, composers who write all this music on a manuscript, and it would be sitting in the bottom drawer. I don't think that's the case so much. Well, it's too easy to get it out there. And perhaps there's too much music out there. Rhetorical thought, yes, for the day.
We have another question.
This may be a strange question. I'm a theatre person. When a playwright writes a new work,
Yes.
often it gets altered when it's first performed, or after it's first performed, once the actor starts to speak the words. So what I wonder is, does the same thing happen for you, or for a composer? Do you hear something played, and then rewrite
No, not very often. And that must be infuriating, by the way, when that happens in the theatre. No, I mean, I've been on to ex-individual who's playing in this work and said, can you do that a bit more strongly, X thing? And I asked again, and it didn't quite happen. So that happens, but really across this week, that has not happened at all. Everybody, to a fault, plays the music exactly as I wrote it. And that's partly thanks to me having notated it so well. If you see what I mean, you notate everything, you know, the tempo, the dynamics, all those interpretative things, that it comes out as you want it. And there are little surprises, balance and dynamics and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Without a doubt, it's a wonderful thing as a performer to have the composer sitting there, that we can play for them and they can give us feedback, and it's very organic and powerful. You know, we can't ask Schubert, what did you mean by this, or what do you think of that? You know, so it's an incredibly valuable process, and you know, such a vibrant part of our festival to have our wonderful living composers here and writing music for us. So it's amazing.
Well, it's a lovely opportunity because it doesn't necessarily happen before every premiere, and I think at least audiences can see that you're a, if not a normal, you're a sort of living, breathing spirit. Because I remember when I started composing, I didn't really know what a composer looked like. And so my first one was John Rimmer, who was my teacher, and so I found that a composer could look like him. You know, which is, and now, I mean, most people out there don't know about composers. Let's face it, this is a privileged, small slice of the population. But most people who say, what do you do? I'm a composer, they say, oh, my son-in-law used to play the trumpet. And then you can't say much else, so that's all right. It's a bit like what I would say if somebody said, well, actually, I'm a nuclear physicist that works on rockets. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say my son used to study science at Selwyn College, but sometimes it's people's way in, you know.
So we probably, oh yes, we've got another question.
When you referred just now, you said a composer could look like him, and probably most of your life composers did look like him.
Yes.
And there weren't many hers. And what's that mean?
That's a question from the indomitable. Now, hang on, it wasn't supposed to be that word I chose, actually, but you are also indomitable, Elizabeth Kerr, who has done a lot to champion the woman in New Zealand music, and also the man. Do you know what, Elizabeth? I can admit it to you now that we're all older. It never worried me. So when I started as a composer, I had Douglas Muse and John Rimmer as teachers. But I never thought, but where are the women? Because I guess I knew that there was Jenny McLeod and Gillian Whitehead, but I never thought I need a female role model. For some reason I thought, well, the men are enough. Now, I don't know. I don't know what I thought. I didn't, it wasn't a thing that struck me. However, a few years went by and I became the role model for younger female composers. I was very conscious of that, and that's good. And but actually, I've retired from teaching at Auckland, and so has Leonie Holmes, and that means there are no more female composers teaching at universities in New Zealand, and that's not a good situation in 2024, but I personally, we were a bunch of women composers. In my couple of years, there was Leonie Holmes and Dorothy Carr and Glenda Keane and myself, and we all went on and got doctorates and all became composers, and we were enough. We were a peer group who inspired each other, which was interesting. Yeah.
Possibly a positive light in that tunnel that we're heading down. Our emerging composers, this is our third year of emerging composers, and we have people applying, young emerging composers applying from all over the country, and each year we have selected a female as our preferred, as in they were the strongest candidates in that process. So I would hope that there will be more in the future.
Yes, it's a good thought, isn't it? And also the composer has, there have been, what, 3 of us out of 4.
Yeah, that's right.
And, I mean, well, it's a whole conversation, because the male composers haven't done anything wrong. And so you want to keep things kind of nicely balanced.
Yeah. Well, we do actually need to wrap this up because we've got a concert that's going to be starting in 25 minutes.
Oh, yes.
So, thank you so much, Eve. Thanks for all of your music from throughout your life and for sharing so personally and honestly and with great integrity that you bring to your music. I think it shines really strongly through the music you write. And congratulations and thank you. And I can't wait to play Earth's Eye again tonight.
Thank you so much.